أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم ثم السلام على آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم الأجمعين إلى يوم الدين صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى صدق الله العظيم صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Now the few ayat that I recited are from Surah Al-Duha. Surah Al-Duha is the 93rd surah of the Quran. If God gives us life and the opportunity, inshallah, we will discuss Duha and Inshira. Just a little bit of a preamble on these two surahs. If ever you're feeling lost, ever you're feeling anxious, incredibly sad, these are the two surahs to recite. They're the comfort surahs. And they're phenomenal. But inshallah, when we talk about them, we'll understand them a little bit more. When I look at the life of Abdullah, and you look at his words, and you see what he spoke, one of the things that you and I possibly do only on the day of Ashura is follow his footsteps. We're supposed to do it throughout all of his life, but we do this on the day of Ashura. In this amal, we go 7 times back and forth, and we say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, ridham bi qada'ihi wa tasliman li amri. Now, very often when we do things as a sort of, this is something we have to do, and it's just part of a ritual. But I need you to imagine this man. Imagine a man, he's 56, 57. Imagine standing in a desert. You've got one side, you're looking at a battlefield. And at that battlefield, you've got your friends, your family, your sons. They're slaughtered. There's an army across the river of 10,000 or more, however many they were. And all these have been killed thirsty. On the other side, you see some tents that are surrounded by fire in the heat of the desert. In your arms, you have a child who is pinned to your shoulder. He's pinned to your shoulder. You are thinking, you could imagine this man, right? You are thinking, how do I take this child back to his mom? Because out of everything in life, you can understand people having hatred for adults, but there is very few human beings in the world who will not give water to a child. So he's thinking, how do I explain this inhumanity to the mom? Yet look what it says. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We all understand that. We are from Allah and to Him we will return. But he says, ridham bi qada'ihi. Now, I don't know about Urdu, but in Gujarati, Raji. Razi also is Urdu, isn't it? Ridhan is from the same word. I am utterly happy, content, biqada'ihi, with what Allah has intended. Right? وَتَسْلِيمًا لِأَمْرِهِ, and I am at peace with His orders. You couldn't understand the man, and this sentence has always intrigued me. And what intrigues me also is another sentence, and that's something that you will hear in the secular world as well, which means, amongst my chaos, there was you. So in the middle of my chaos, there was you. So our subject, inshallah, for the next 8-9 days, however many days we're going to be here, we're going to talk about this trust in Allah, what you call tawakkul in Allah. How do you do this in times of absolute, when I say despondency, when you're down in the dumps, there's nobody you can turn to? How did this man do it? And if he did it, and I'm Husseini, surely I can do it as well. But today, a little bit of a preamble about what we're talking about. In other words, what this month is all about. And we've got to share it. I've got to share one thing with you, though. I have some interfaith friends. In fact, I have a lot of interfaith friends. And when I talked to them about Ashura, and I said, you know what, this is what it's all about, because it's very difficult sometimes to explain what we're about. And they said, this is their thing. They said, thank you for your explanation. I'll be with your thoughts in the next 10 days. This is all of them. And he said, as you reflect on the detrimental effects of oppression, may the hearts of all oppressors be moved to compassion for the oppressed. You know, we think how we should think in life. We oppress as well. When we think of oppressors, we only think of people like Yazid or Muawiyah, but we've got to bring it back to our lives. And hopefully we will look at this in the next few days. My teachers used to tell me that if you cannot attend a Majalis, if you cannot do anything where you've got to travel so much, then at least read about Imam. But at that time, my teachers did not have YouTube. Now you have YouTube. Listen to something about Imam. Shed a small tear, because the sixth Imam says, when two people gather to discuss or talk about Imam Hussein or shed a tear about him, the third is always an angel who prays for their forgiveness and for their hajat or for their wishes to be fulfilled. And this is what this month is about. Not only this month, I think it's every day. I grew up in a household where my grandmother, besides wiladats, kushalis you call them, I don't know what you call them, or mauluds, whatever you call them, or besides Eids, every single day after dinner, and she had a 4-poster bed, and we would all gather there, not for what she was going to do, but the tabarruk was really good, okay? But we used to gather there, and she would recite 2 stanzas, 2 verses of a marthia, and she would cry every single day. I mean, we were there, like I said, being very honest for the tabarruk, because that was the best tabarruk you could get from anywhere. Where you weren't allowed sweets and chocolates, this is where you would get them, okay? But it's many, many years later that you realize what she was trying to instill in us. She was trying to instill in us the love of Hussein. And that doesn't go anywhere, okay? So it's the 1st of Muharram, so maybe I shouldn't be talking about this, but I'd like to say it anyway. The fast on today is highly recommended. Yeah, like phenomenally recommended. So, a bit late, maybe next year. Imam Ali Rida alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. You'll get some solace from this. So he tells his companion, Rayyan ibn al-Shabib, he said, Ibn al-Shabib, are you fasting? He said, no. He said, do you know that this is the day when Zakaria fasted and asked for a son? You know Zakaria? How old is he? About 90. Yes? Zakaria is looking after Maryam. And he's walking into Maryam's chambers. And he obviously knocks on the door and he walks inside and he sees fruits. And he says, Ya Maryam, where did this come from? And she said, Hada min indillah. This is from Allah. And Quran says, this is Surah number 3, ayah 38, you can have a look. Hunalika da'a Zakaria. There and then Zakaria raised his hands in da'a. And what does he say? He said, Rabbi habli min ladunka dhurriyatan tayyibah. At 90. I wouldn't recommend that, to have kids at 90, okay? But he asks for a child at 90. And his wife is aqir. That means not only has she passed the age where she would have children, but she has never had children before. And look what happens, ayah 39. Immediately, the angel tells him, immediately, Annallaha yubashiruka, Allah gives you the good news of a son. So I would advise you, because you've just heard this, like Zakaria, raise your hands in dua now to make the impossible the possible. It's phenomenal. This day is something else. Incidentally, to fast 9 days of the first 9 of Muharram is highly recommended. You don't fast on Ashura, but that's just something we have to do. Now we've gathered here for Azadari. And forgive me for saying this, but many a time the faces that you see them year after year. You see them in the month of Muharram, the 10 days, and then you don't see them until the following Muharram, but that's alhamdulillah. We come here for Azadari. If you translate Azadari, Aza is Arabic for grief or mourning, and Dari is Persian for having grief or mourning, so sitting down here. So let's just look at what we do. I can tell you one thing, Azadari will never go. It will never go. It will change its face. You know, it may change its mode, but it will not change. Now let's see our mode and how we can take that forward. So the first thing we always do is Majalis, isn't it? Everybody has a Majalis, so everybody comes to a Majalis. Majalis comes from Jalasa, to sit. In a gathering, it's called a Majalis. Because we've said it so often, every time you say Majalis now, it is related to Imam Hussein. So let's look at some hadith. Imam Sadiq, to his companion Fudail ibn Ayyas. He says, Fudail, do you hold gatherings to recall the day of Ashura? And Fudail says, yes. And Imam says, may Allah bless you, I highly approve of these gatherings. Why? Because when we sit here on this farsh, there is some sort of barakah. And that barakah, first of all, it softens your heart. Because when you cry, there's a soft heart. When it softens your heart, you could be anyone. But you think about, what legacy am I going to leave rather. Who am I? If I am a Husseini, do I behave like a Husseini? And we'll talk about that in the days to come. But it makes the human being reflect. Who am I? Where am I going? What am I doing? Because we're sitting here. There's not much to do except listen to me or listen to people who are reciting. So there is a process going on in the head. And the idea is to go and think, who am I really? If I call myself Husseini, does the brand actually match the functionality? And again, we'll talk about this. The second thing we do in these majalis, or in the majlis, is we recite marthias. Now I know there is so much talk about marthias, you know. Should they be to the tune of songs? Should they not? You know what? That is secondary. Listen to the words, okay? Just listen to the words. And first of all, we've got to ensure the words are right. Very often, the words are, oh my goodness, what happened there, okay? And you ask them, why did you write this? And they say, well, it didn't rhyme properly. Really? That's not how it's supposed to be. So marthias are good. Now let's take marthias. Again, Imam Sadiq. He's sitting in a gathering, and a young man walks in. His name was Ja'far ibn Affan. Ja'far walks in, and everybody knew Ja'far. When I see you here, and I think, yeah, I know it's going to be good. Okay? It's the same way. Ja'far walks in, and he says to Ja'far, I hear you write poems for Hussein. And he says, yes, I do. He said, come sit near me. He sits near him and he says, please recite. Now as he's reciting, people are weeping. Now I have an issue here, a little bit of an issue. Sometimes we're reciting, but they're not touching hearts, because maybe our crowd is not understanding the difficult words. No criticism on what's being recited, but maybe they should be words that people can understand. Because sometimes it's so hard. I know the word Hussein should bring tears to my eyes, but it's so nice to be able to understand what is happening. So maybe we could have a recitation, and maybe in the near future we will have the translation on a screen. Who knows? Yeah, maybe we will progress there. So look at what he says to Ja'far. With his beard wet with tears, Imam tells him, Ja'far, the angels close to Allah have descended and they hear you. They weep like us. Allah has reserved Jannah for you at this very moment and forgiven your sins. I'm telling you words of Imam. There is none who recites the eulogies for Hussein and weeps and makes others weep, except that Allah makes Jannah wajib for him and forgives him. Why? Because you softened the heart, because you made that heart think, am I going to be Husseini, am I going to be Yazidi? That's why. That's bottom line. It's not like something out of the air without any explanation with it. Okay. The other thing we do is we have a mindil. A mindil is the Arabic word for a handkerchief. I know I say this every year, but it's really important. Quran says, enough ati dhikra. To repeat has benefits in it. Okay. So what is this? What is this? What does this handkerchief do? Again, I go to Imam's companion, Imam Rida's companion, Rayyan ibn Shabib. He says, Ibn Shabib, if you weep on the afflictions of Hussein, such as tears fall upon your cheeks, Allah will forgive your sins, big or small, less or a lot. Now this actually intrigued me. He said, if one tear is thrown into the pit of Jahannam, the fire in that pit would subside. And every time I read this, it makes me think. There is something in this tear. There's lots of types of tears. One of the tears, recognition of truth. And that's the tear this is talking about. But I will repeat something I repeat almost for the last, since my teacher narrated this to me about 10 or 15 years ago. So I have a teacher. She's now in her 90s. She's phenomenal. And she tells me that she was reciting Majalis because her teacher died on the 8th of Muharram. She's 90, so you can imagine how old her teacher was. She said she died on the 8th of Muharram, and she said, I had to take her place. She said, I took her place, and I just wanted to go to help give ghusl and kafan to her. So she said, when I finished Majlis, I ran to the place where they were giving ghusl and kafan. They were giving ghusl and kafan to her. They'd finished ghusl and they were giving kafan. She said, the first thing I said was, where is her mindil? I think you call it Rumal Fatima, right? Where is your Rumal Fatima? Where is it? Where is it? And they said, can't find it. Don't know where it is. So she said, I took mine and I put it in her hand, and she said, God is my witness. The hand closed over the handkerchief and tears came out of her eyes. Now when I hear that, and I hear this is from Imam, that it will calm the fire of Jahannam. There is something here that we need to take back for the rest of the year. So I suggest from tomorrow, if you don't have it today, have a handkerchief. There is also a hadith, there's 10 places where du'as are heard. I'll just mention one. One is where if you cry, when you have rahmah, when you have kindness, when you have mercy towards someone who is upset and crying, and you have no connection to them, then Allah answers your du'as. Now here, this is what we do. We cry. So raise your hands when you're crying. You see the phenomenal effects here. Another thing we do is Matam. I don't know, what do you call it, Matam? Matam, yes? Okay. So people have an issue with Matam, beating of chests, right? And I was listening to a talk by one of our own people. His name is Abbas Jafar. And Abbas was talking about his teacher in Qum. And his teacher visited many other houses in the world. And he says that his teacher visited Moscow. So in Moscow, there was an Imam Bara where they were doing Matam. And he said his teacher was very perplexed because he saw that halfway between the Matam, suddenly the lights went out and the person reciting the Noha whispered. And when he started whispering, everybody in the congregation opened one button of their shirt, put their hand inside the shirt and just moved their hands. Not the way we normally do Matam. And then when that finished, that Noha finished, they went back to normal Matam. So he said, my teacher asked this person, and said, why do you do this? Why do you suddenly in the middle stop? You know, we all want to know people's different way of doing things. And he said there was a time in Russia when we weren't allowed to commemorate Hussein. We weren't allowed to express our religion. So our parents told us that if you were Husseini, that is one thing, one demarcation, differentiator. Because people cry, people wear black, people sit in Majalis or sit together and talk. But only people who are Husseini do Matam. So our parents taught us that we're not allowed to do this. So you know what? We will whisper this in your ears. You put your hand on your chest and you tell Allah to accept that we are Husseini. So if you are ever against something called Matam, think of this. Because it's the only differentiator. Who only does Matam? Only those who are Husseini. Imam Khomeini used to say, every beat of the chest is you telling the oppressor that I will not stand for your oppression. That was Imam Khomeini used to say. So that, that's Matam. I wanted to explain all these things so we understand before we go into the next 9 days. Processions were there, so we were able to convey the message to others. Then we have Taboot and Alam and Cradle and all these things, and they all have something to them. I'd like to explain Taboot first, and then we'll go to Alam. And I apologize, but my topic, inshallah, from tomorrow. So I was reading something about 9/11. You know what happened on 9/11? And they had no bodies left, right? So one of these families wanted to have a burial. And they got an empty coffin. They got the fire engine to bring the coffin. And they had a burial ceremony and they buried the coffin. Now my question is, why did they do that? Why did they do that? They did that to honor those who were murdered. And there was no bodies left, right? That's exactly what we do. When we take that taboot out, we are saying, Hussein, if we were there, we would not have allowed for your body to stay on that sand, on that burning sand. We would have buried it. When you see the cradle, you are thinking of the innocence of children. And you are thinking, how much water do I waste? How much do I waste? You see the amount we waste? It's phenomenal. There are children, look around the world. Just that little bit of saving of water. When you see alam, what do you think? And I've said this so many times, I'm not sure about the alams over here. But most alams that you see are dressed in ladies' clothes. Have you seen them? Pink, green, yellow, blue, all the beautiful colors that women wear. I have never in my life, even in the most masculine of societies, seen an alam which has trousers and shirts. I don't know, you might have, I haven't. So what is the origination of this? It's a flag. Maybe when we progress, it'll be a flag with just a normal flag. But today it is an alam. For a long, long time ago, it's been an alam. Because when they wanted to remember Hussein, they thought, let's think how he was carried. Imam Zainul Abidin placed the body of his father on a stretcher made out of palm trees, right? So the first people who wanted to remember that took one palm trunk and they put a tear on it. But the tear looked like a spear. So the people in the Indian subcontinent said, that is not happening, because that's a bit aggressive. So they changed it to a hand. Now they may have thought about the hand of Abbas. Could have been, because an alam represents the loyalty of Abbas. It could represent the fact that we will only give our hand in bayat to Hussein. It could represent the fact that this hand will only help. It will never oppress. There are many things. It could represent the 5 roots of religion that we talk about. You can read a lot in it. But it was pretty empty. Then the ulama in the Indian subcontinent decided that we need to dress this. It looks too naked. And they thought, who carried the message of Hussein? It was a woman. It was Zainab. So they put women's clothes on it. And then what people did in Muharram was to take bits of that cloth. So to save that, we stuck green threads on. Now those green threads are there when I wear one to remind me that I too need to be like Zainab. There wasn't anything else in it. That was what it was about, as a reminder. These are all reminders to the human being, right? So all these things that we do, but the last thing that I think that is really important is to be able to recite Ziyara Ashura. So I'm going to just give you a few things. Say you can't. This is 6th Imam, Imam Sadiq. He has a companion called Sudair. He tells Sudair, do you recite the Ziyarah of Abu Abdullah every day? And Sudair says, no. He says, every week? No. He says, every month? He says, no. He was probably a Khoja and only did it on Ashura. I don't know, okay? So, he wasn't actually. So Imam says, what is stopping you? To go up to your roof, that means under the sky, look left and right, if you don't know the direction to Karbala, and just say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. How difficult is it for you to say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah? You know, to Safwan, he said, when you are confronted with an adversity and you don't know how to get out of that adversity, just go under the sky and say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Now, if you think that you're not in Karbala, and may Allah grant us the opportunity to visit Karbala year after year after year, inshallah, we will go together as a group, who knows? Okay, let us pray to Allah. But if you can't, I'd like you to listen to this. You know, Ayatollah Bahajat was a phenomenal man, amazing man, read about him. So he talks about this, and he talks about a group of farmers. These farmers had decided to go to the Haram of Imam Rida. And along the way, they're walking to the Haram of Imam Rida. And along the way, any of the farms they come, they tell the farmers, come with us, we'll all go together as a group. They come to one farm, and the farmer said, I can't leave my animals. I just can't. There's nobody to look after them. And they say, come on. All you're worried about is money and farm. And you know what? He said, it's not about that. I can't leave my animals. They are my amana. I have to look after them. And they were insistent. They said, we have left, what about you? And he didn't know what to do. So he turned towards Imam. He turned towards Mashhad. And he said, Assalamu alayka yabna Rasulallah. And every single farmer heard a reply, Wa alayka assalam. So if you ever think that Imam is not replying, then there is a lack of faith somewhere. For every time you turn towards Karbala and you call out to him, he will reply. Can you imagine an Imam telling you and me, peace be upon you? And don't even think of him as dead. Quran says, لا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا. Do not think of those who have given their lives in Allah as dead. بل أحياء, they are alive. Think of it that way. You know, if you forget everything I say, do this. And if you can't do it every day, you know, or you can't do it on a specific time, I'm sure everybody drinks water. Yes? Everybody drinks water. And these days we become more healthy and we don't have all the, I won't say all the fizzy stuff, although maybe you can see it somewhere, but we drink water. Before you drink water, wasn't that the wasiyah of Imam Hussein to say the sajjad? Did he not say, tell my Shias that when they drink water, they should think of the thirst of their Imam and they should say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. How difficult is it? There's a wonderful Japanese guy, Masami Eroto, who's done these studies of water. And when good things were said on water and he studied the crystals, they were beautiful. When bad names and bad things were said on water and he studied the crystals, they were ugly. So surely you and I are made up of so much water. You know our bodies are 70, 80% water, whatever they are. There is an effect on that which I put inside it. My grandmother, when we sat to eat, if we had water on the table and we had been talking nonsense, as we normally do on tables, or about people, she would not drink the water. She would say, change that water. Take that water, put it in the plants. But get me water that does not have what you have been talking about in it. Talk about things that are good. And it's really important to understand this when we see water. So these are some things we can do. Water, have a mindil, have a rumal Fatimah with you. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. These are little things that we can do that will change. For after all, it is about a change of behaviors here. It's not about coming and saying, yeah, okay, there was a Majalis, she said a few things, she said this or that or the other, and that was it. That's not what it's about. Shed a tear, keep that. When something hurts, put it on it. When somebody is in trouble, give it to them. It will give them confidence. And when somebody asks you for your handkerchief, give it. Just give it. It has an amazing effect. Okay. But today let's go towards Masaib. Inshallah tomorrow we will start our topic on tawakkul. You know, in Quran, when Ibrahim builds the Kaaba, I don't know, read Surah Al-Baqarah. He raises the foundation of the Kaaba with his son. And he says, رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. We all know that, yes? We use it as a dua. For everything we do in life, we say, accept from us. Even here when we sit, accept this azadari from us. All of that. But he also says, Ya Allah, make people's hearts inclined towards us. This is the dua of Ibrahim. Read Surah Al-Baqarah and you will see his dua there. And when Imam Ali was asked to comment on this dua, he said, Nahnu da'watul Ibrahim. We are the answer of the dua of Ibrahim. You may not even know them. Very often when you ask children, what do you know about Hussein? And they say, the day of Ashura. But what about the rest of his life? But even then, they will come. They will come and sit here. Because something draws us to him. So one, it is the dua of Ibrahim. And the second is the dua of Fatimah. We are here because of Fatimah. So, let's just talk about her for a bit. Normally in the wedding months, I get called to recite Mawlud. You call it Mawlud, Milad you call it. Milad for a wedding. And invariably in Milad, they want a Majlis. And you're thinking, hello, you're all dressed up, you've got so much makeup on. Why do you want to cry? I can see people sort of holding their tears because the mascara is going to run down. You say in Milads, you're asking, why? Because this is a sunnah of Imam Sajjad. So Imam Sajjad has this companion called Zuhri. And Zuhri's son is getting, or daughter is getting married. I don't know if there's a son or daughter. Invites Imam. And Imam says, look, I will pray for your child. I can't come to happy occasions. You know, you will excuse me. And he says, no, my child's not getting married until you come. And Imam said, I will come if you have a majlis in the name of my father. Now that was a lesson for you and me because it was for us to carry out this sunnah. The majlis is arranged. They go to collect Imam. Imam is not there. Zuhri gets very upset, comes back home. Imam is at the door. And he says, but we came to pick you up. That's what we do. And he says, not for Hussein. For Hussein, you turn up. The Zakir recites the Majlis. In between the Masayib, Zuhri looks up and Imam is not there. And he's perplexed. He's worried. So he runs out and he sees Imam sitting where you and I. Take off your shoes. And he says, did the Zakir say something that was wrong? What happened? And Imam said, no, as I looked up, I saw my grandma. I saw Fatimah to Zahra. She didn't come in. She sat where the shoes are. I often, when I take off my shoes downstairs, I often look around. I hope I can see her. But I know she's there. I have heard many incidents from people who tell me that when they have had majlises at their house and they're sitting inside, when they've walked out, the shoes are all lined up. They don't know who did it. I can tell them who did it. So when you take off your shoes, take them off with respect. Look around you. And while we are sitting here, ask her. All of us have life difficulties. All of us. Ask her in the name of her son. Talk to her. She's here. She comes to every majlis because you're remembering her son. That's why she comes. Imam leaves Medina in Rajab. And raise your hands, please, in dua amongst your tears. And we are told that Imam goes to say goodbye to his mom first. He goes to the grave of Fatimah and he says, Ma, I have to go. The people of Medina say, don't go, please. And he said, I have to go. Ana ahyi sunnati abi wa jaddi. I have to revive the sunnah of my father and my grandfather. Ana urid amr bil ma'roof wa nahy anil munkar. I need to bring goodness back into society, peace back into this society. To be able to advising them to good and telling them to get away from that which is bad. We are told for a little while his eyes close on his mom's grave and he sees his mom and she says, Hussein, Hussein, I cannot bear separation from you, Hussein. Hussein, I will be with you all the way. I will leave you with the time she leaves the world. Imam Ali gives her ghusl and kafan. And she is in her room.
And Imam calls all his children. He says, Hassan, Hussein, Kulthum, Zainab, come and say farewell, wida to your mom. All the children come. Hussein stands in a corner. I'm not going to come. And he says, why, my child, come. This is to say goodbye to your mom. He says, I never went to mom if she didn't call me. Now, Ayatollah Dastaghaib in his book Fatimah al-Zahra, he writes, he says that the hands of Zahra come out of her coffin and she says, Hussein, ya qurrat al-ain wa thamarat fuadi. Hussein, they still not have buried me. Come, Hussein. This is the connection of Fatima and Hussein. Please, ask her now in his name. Pray for those who are oppressed in the world. Pray for peace in this world of ours that is absolutely chaotic. ربنا تقبل منا